This is 911. Do you have an emergency?
Today on Rescue 911. A kidney donor is found for a sick and dying man.
He can't miss this chance. It could be years before they find another kidney for him.
Watch a news crew go the extra mile to find a missing patient and get him to the hospital on time. Then,
if somebody knocks a rock off above you, it's going to come right down on top of you.
An accident on the cliffs leaves two climbers stranded and helpless.
We could contract hypothermia.
On Rescue 911.
When 47-year-old Charles Ridgway was told that his kidneys were failing, he knew he might have just heard his own death sentence. Charles' blood type was so rare, he might die before a kidney could be found that was a good match for him. Encouraged to lead as normal a life as possible while he waited for a donor, Charles went camping with his family on March 25th in a remote corner of California. At 6:30 that evening, a matching kidney suddenly became available. If Charles was not found and brought to the hospital within 12 hours, he just might miss his last chance at life.
KNX is appealing to its listeners for help in the hope that it may save a life. Anaheim resident Charles Ridgway is in desperate need of a kidney transplant. At this hour, he's supposed to be camping in the Imperial County community of Galamus. He has been awaiting for a donor kidney, and one has just become available.
Calls for help had gone out all over Southern California, including one to news helicopter pilot Bob Turr.
It was the night before Easter, and I was at home with my wife, my two kids, and we got a phone call from the Orange County Search and Rescue people. And they were hoping that KNX News Radio would do a story on Charles Ridgway being missing and about the kidney. Nobody called in with any information, and about 11:30 we became very, very edgy, and I told my wife that maybe I should go down there with a helicopter and see if I can locate him. After all, how big could Glamis be?
Bob contacted Charles' son, Matt Ridgway. Knowing how desperate his father was, Matt was also thinking of going to look for him.
I guess my first reaction was shock, and all I could think of was, he can't miss this chance. If he misses this chance, it could be years before they find another kidney for him.
Orange County Search and Rescue, right?
Gary Stockdale with Orange County Search and Rescue was coordinating the search for Charles Ridgway.
We had learned from Imperial County Sheriff that there are approximately 30,000 people camping in Glamis. They'd really be unable to just go out and find him. We had had a window of 6 a.m. that he needed to be back into Western Medical Center for the kidney. And we were just simply running out of time with the resources that were available to us.
When the local sheriffs and rangers gave up the search, Matt and a cousin set out to find his father before it was too late.
When we reached Glamis, we saw hundreds of ATVs, hundreds of white trailers, and that was our description. Look for a white trailer with 2 red ATVs. There were hundreds, and they were everywhere. We just didn't know where to start. We turned on our night sun and we started looking around. I would get on the loudspeaker and I would say, "Charles Ridgway, we have your kidney." People were looking at us like we were from another planet.
After driving at speeds up to 100 miles an hour, Matt reached the campgrounds.
There's a dirt road that goes off the main highway, and we started going down the road searching for my father.
But at dune number 20, Matt's truck got stuck in the sand. Up in the helicopter, Bob Turr had problems of his own.
Trying to look at 200, 300 ATVs with license plates is near impossible. Also, our search fuel was becoming very low.
We could see far off in the distance a light in the sky roaming around, and we knew that it was Bob Turr in his helicopter. We got to the campsite with some trailers in it, started pounding on the door of one trailer. And a gentleman was nice enough to come out and help us. We pointed to the helicopter and said, "We need to get to that helicopter." I jumped on the back and off we went, chasing after the helicopter.
For some reason now, the corner of my eye, I saw a light flashing in the distance a few miles out. And we saw a red ATV with 2 people on it. The people aboard the ATV were waving frantically at us. We got on the loudspeaker and said, "Do you know Charles Ridgway?"
Bob Tour hopped out of the helicopter and ran over to me, and I introduced myself.
Yeah, I'm Matt Ridgway. I'm his son. Okay.
Matt would be able to recognize his family's camper from the air.
Stay on the ground. Radio contact, Matt. Come with us.
But Bob had only 10 minutes of fuel left before he would have to turn back. This was Charles' last chance.
We took off, started going south, went past the truck, which I'd left the lights on so that we could see it again. And just a little ways past the truck, we spotted my mom and dad's trailer. And I started screaming, "That's them, there they are, sit down, go, that's them." And Bob Tour told me to jump out and wake my dad up.
We were very low on fuel, and I knew that we didn't have any time for any family reunions. And I yelled, "We've got to go now. If you have to come naked, you're coming."
It happened so fast, and I just broke down and cried. Matt was standing there, so we put our arms around each other, and he said, "Hey, it's good news, you know."
We got Ridgway aboard the copter, took off, and started heading over to the airport, where we were to meet an Orange County search and rescue team member with an airplane.
Charles Ridgway made it to the hospital in Santa Ana by 5:45 a.m. and received his kidney transplant.
I felt elated. Here we are out in the middle of the desert, and we found literally a needle in a haystack. And it finally hit me at that point that we might have saved somebody's life. And I mean really saved somebody's life.
Charles returned home to his family 9 days after his successful kidney transplant. He has gotten his second chance at life.
I was just so thankful that it went as well as it did. I'm just amazed at how well he is now compared to what he was.
My list of things to be thankful for is unreal. The state of my health and the energy level and all that I'm enjoying is so much better than what I was experiencing even on dialysis. There's nothing like the real kidney, and it's really doing its job, and I'm so thankful. There's such a list of people that were involved in the rescue. They're all on my list as far as heroes are concerned, and I'll be thankful for them for a lifetime.
Next.
It's a dangerous mountain. It's not got the loosest rock in this here, but if somebody knocks a rock off above you, it's going to come right down on top of you.
"34-year-old Hummy Man has been an amateur mountain climber for years. On July 25th, 1987, Hummy and his partner Sean Collinsworth began a 4-day trek up the dangerous east face of Mount Whitney, the tallest mountain in the continental United States. But on this climb, they would never make it to the top.
It's a dangerous mountain. It's not got the loosest rock in this here. There's other mountains where the rocks are more fragile than Whitney. But if somebody knocks a rock off above you, it's going to come right down on top of you.
The mountains don't care. You know, a storm happens. Suddenly you develop hypothermia and you die there.
It was the third day. Sean was leading.
In my line of work as a cop, there are a lot of life-threatening and critical situations. One of the reasons why I climb, believe it or not, it's relaxing because it is so intense, it is so focused.
On this day, they planned to climb Mount Whitney's sheer east face to the top and back down again.
It was a little scary. I had not climbed for a while at that altitude. There was what we call exposure of around 1,500 feet. In other words, you look down and it's 1,500 feet straight down.
While trying to reach an area called Long Ledge, Sean and Hummy realized they had climbed too far to one side.
I think we're off route. Okay, I think the ledge that we want to be on is above us. I think this takes us right to it. Slack.
We could see the route, and I led up to the Long Ledge. I had no problem. I just scampered up. In fact, it was like vertical, but the easiest type of vertical climbing. I anchored myself in with 2 or 3 pieces of protection, and then told Hummy to climb up. I could not see him. He was below me by around 30 feet and around a corner. The rope went taut, so I knew he was falling.
You okay?
And there was a tremendous amount of small boulders, and I was listening to the rocks tumble down into the valley below.
You okay? I don't know. I think I broke my leg.
I can tell by the inflection of his voice, he was definitely hurt. I asked him if he could climb up to me. He told me he couldn't climb up. He was in too much pain, and he was afraid of further damaging his leg.
Okay, I'm gonna belay you down to the next ledge, okay? All right.
At 1,500 feet or 2,000 feet, when there's an accident, you're just not lowered to the ground. We both knew that we'd have to make some very critical decisions as soon as we could get together and anchor ourselves into the ledge. He anchored himself in, and then I down climbed and we started doing first aid.
Okay.
And we could clearly see that the leg was broken right around the kneecap.
Because Hummy's injuries were so serious, it would be impossible to get him off the mountain without help.
It was now at around 12:30 or 1 in the afternoon. Even if I would have been able to get help, Hummy would have spent the night there by himself. We both knew that I was going to go below freezing. Two people have a better chance of keeping each other warm, so both of us elected to stay there. And hopefully other climbers would be coming up and we would be able to signal them. Within 2.5, 3 hours, we saw two people coming up. We could barely see them, and what it was literally two black specks.
Help! Accident! Get help!
Sean and Hummy had no idea if any help would arrive before nightfall. But late in the afternoon, a helicopter came into view.
My hopes picked up when a Forest Service helicopter came by and settled no more than maybe 50 feet away. I pointed to my partner, lifted my leg up, pointed at it, and then made a motion like breaking a stick. The pilot did a thumbs up sign at me and then veered off and went back down into the valley. And then all was quiet again.
We have an injured climber on the east face of Mount Whitney.
At 5:45 p.m., the Sheriff's Department called in the China Lake Mountain Rescue Group. Volunteer Linda Finko was the operations leader.
One of my first questions to the sheriff was if we could have access to a helicopter to fly an advance team up there so that they could hopefully get up for him that night. You start some calls on that for us while we try to get our team going?
Field leader Bart Hine and an advance team attempted to land near Iceberg Lake at the base of the east face.
Unfortunately, when we got there, the shadow of the mountain was covering our landing zone, and the pilot didn't feel that he could land safely. So he backed off and went back down to Lone Pine, where we re-met Linda, who was setting up base camp there.
No rescuers would be able to reach Sean and Hummy before morning.
We weren't sure how serious the injury was. We wanted to be guaranteed that we had people up there, so we started an advance team in that night on the ground.
We've got a policy that we try to keep people moving toward our subject all the time, even though we've got a promise of a resource coming in this case, in the helicopter the next morning.
We were just a hair below 14,000 feet. I knew that we could contract hypothermia. Hummy had a space blanket. We were able to get very close to each other and wrap the space blanket, which was made for one person, around both of us.
You're gonna be okay.
You've got people exposed. If they're injured, they're typically maybe going into shock, and now you put this cool weather condition on them. It can help depress the body even more.
When we continue,
you talk about anything just to stay awake because you don't want your metabolism to drop and create a better environment for hypothermia. We just fall asleep and never wake up.
It had been more than 10 hours since Hummy Man had fallen while climbing the sheer east face of Mount Whitney. He and his partner Sean had no idea how cold it would get, nor how much longer it would take for help to arrive.
You talk about anything just to stay awake because you don't want your metabolism to drop. What that's going to do is create a better environment for hypothermia. We just fall asleep and never wake up.
see that down there? We got headlamps coming up.
But the China Lake Mountain Rescue Group was still hours away.
At around 3:30 or 4 in the morning, we were becoming hypothermic. You start shivering. This creates heat. It's a last-ditch effort for the body to create its own warmth. You stop shivering, and then you'll shiver violently, stop shivering, shiver violently, stop shivering. And the shivering mechanism now is shutting down.
After hiking all night, the search and rescue team was nearing Hummy's location. As soon as it was light enough for a safe landing, they were joined by other rescuers who flew in with additional emergency gear.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
A head popped up around 50 feet above us. They said they were going to be with us in a moment. And then I could see several people coming up over and down climbing to start a rescue.
Volunteer Andrew Mitchell examined Hummy's injuries.
He was happy to see us. His knee was swollen, and any movement, he was in a considerable amount of pain.
To have any chance of being picked up by helicopter, Hummy would have to be hoisted up a rock wall to a larger ledge.
We had to haul a stretcher up 50 to 60 feet, which is about the equivalent of a 6-story building. You can't let your mind wander. One false step or one knot that's tied incorrectly could mean a fall.
We'd already decided that we were either going to have to take him off in a helicopter or take him back down the route. So it was basically up to base camp to get any additional resources we need.
Base, be advised, we have subjects on the ledge at this time. Stand by for further reports. Over.
The naval weapons helicopter hovered over the pinnacle to see if he could keep the power he would need in order to do a pickoff from that. And with the altitude and all the other conditions intermixed, he just felt it was out of his capability. So our next thing was we had to start looking for a helicopter with some high altitude capabilities. And we got the call that afternoon that Scott Air Force Base had found a Chinook at the Stockton Air National Guard that would be available the following morning to come in and to help us in any way that he could.
Sean was finally able to leave, but Hummy would have to wait through another night on the mountain. A 12-ton Chinook from the National Guard arrived the next morning, but there was no guarantee it could successfully pick Hummy off the ledge.
With a helicopter, you always have a risk of something going wrong. With increased altitudes, rock, and a lot of things that helicopters just don't normally fly in.
We moved Hummy from the ledge we were on further out on the rib, out toward the edge, to get us, far away from the wall as we could to help the helicopter.
Smoke up.
We're short final.
The pilot had to carefully maneuver the massive helicopter to keep the rotor blades from hitting the rock walls.
Okay, go right, 30 feet.
They lowered the line down, had to swing it back and forth to get it over to us because he still couldn't get close enough to the mountain to drop it straight down.
Okay, he's got the hook in his hand. Okay, he's off the deck. He's coming up. Under the load, 30.
When he went out there and got out there, he started spinning like a top. We've never seen that happen on any helicopter we've worked with.
I remember lying in this basket, and all of a sudden the helicopter's going around and around and around. So here I am, I'm zipping around, and I'm getting dizzy. I'm closing my eyes, trying to hold it all together. Finally, I turned my head and I started looking around at the mountain. And I was looking around at all these peaks and just thinking it was just beautiful. It was a great ride.
2 years later, Sean and Hummy are still good friends, and Hummy's leg has fully healed.
It still sticks in my mind that, the mountains don't care, and I was lucky that there were people out there who were capable of getting me out, and that help wasn't, 5 days away.
he was real lucky that he didn't get killed. I think he's more cautious since that accident simply because he has 2 kids now. That puts everything else into a new perspective.
I remember when we were, during the course of the night, I started crying because I was really, all of a sudden it was, the reality of what it was that was going on kind of hit me. The fact that I had a little daughter who was under 1 year old, and I was sitting there going, you know, this could actually do it. This could be the final number. But I just didn't know, I didn't want to end up on that little ledge. There was too much more to go back home to.
Mr. Shapiro, step out of the car, please.